Well, hello everybody, and welcome to session 2 of our Hebrews small group. We're covering chapter 3 and 4 in this session. I suggest, if you haven't already, that you hit pause now and take a few minutes to read together chapter 3 and 4 of Hebrews. All right, well, as we dive in, remember from our 1-hour overview that the author of Hebrews is promoting the beauty and majesty of Jesus. That's one of two major themes in the book, and his backdrop for this is the Jewish Old Testament. He's speaking to a Jewish audience, to the Hebrews. And in these chapters, the point is clear. Jesus is far superior to even the most famous leaders in the Old Testament story. Why? Because he's not just a character in the story. He's the plot line. The whole story is about him. In chapter 3, the author is going to start that with Moses. Let's read chapter 3, verses 3 through 6. Yet Jesus is worthy of more glory than Moses, just as the builder of the house has more honor than the house itself. For every house is built by someone, built by the builder of all things is God. Now Moses was faithful in all God's house as a servant to testify to things that would be spoken later. Christ, however, was faithful over God's house as a son, and we are his house if we hold firm the confidence and the pride that belongs to hope. Moses was a servant in God's house, but Jesus is the house, the whole structure, the house of God and the house of the Old Testament story, the house of the Bible, is centered around him. And you and I become part of that house if and as we hold firm our confidence that belongs to hope. That last line in chapter 3, verse 6 constitutes the second major theme in this book, the theme of enduring faith. It also carries an important and difficult observation unique to the book of Hebrews, a warning for the readers not to go the way Israel went in the story of the Old Testament. Israel failed to enter the promised land rest of God because they refused to believe that God was able to bring them into it. And the same is true for us today. Let's read chapter 3, verses 7 through 11. Therefore, as the Holy Spirit says, today, if you hear his voice, don't harden your hearts as in the rebellion, as on the day of testing in the wilderness. That's the Israelites in the Exodus narrative, in the books of Exodus and Numbers. Where your ancestors put me to the test, though they'd seen my works for 40 years, therefore I was angry with that generation and said, they always go astray in their hearts. They've not known my ways, and in my anger I swore, they will not enter my rest. The author appropriates this to the readers as he continues in verses 12 through 14. Let's look there together. Take care, brothers and sisters, that none of you may have an evil and unbelieving heart that turns away from the living God, but exhort one another every day as long as it's called today, so that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. For we've become partakers of Christ if only we hold our first confidence firm to the end. In the story of Israel, the Israelites lost confidence in God's ability to rescue and deliver them, and in their unbelief, they died in the desert instead of entering the goodness of the promised land. And the author of Hebrews says, hey, don't let that be your story. Whatever you're facing, cling to Jesus. Look to the beauty of Jesus, put the anchor of your heart on who he is and what he's done for you, and don't ever turn away from him. Don't let go of him no matter what happens and no matter where life takes you. It's better, I promise, than your old life in Egypt without him. You know, there's a musician, Sarah Groves, who writes a great lyric to a song that goes like this. I've been painting pictures of Egypt, leaving out what it lacks. The future seems so hard and I want to go back. But the places that used to keep me cannot hold the things I've learned. And that road was closed off to me while my back was turned. And one of my mentors said this to me: Jesus often leads us away from what is known, comfortable, and wrong, and towards what is unknown, uncomfortable, and exactly right. And I wonder what that looks like in your life, in your story right now. Chapter 4 highlights another Old Testament leader famous in the Exodus story, and it's Joshua, who led the Israelites into the promised land, which the author is going to speak of as their rest. In like manner, the author will say, another rest is available to God's people who believe, one that Jesus leads us into. It's not the rest of a piece of real estate in the Middle East. It's greater than that. It's the rest of heaven. And the message is, don't fail to enter because of disobedience. Now let's read some of that in chapter 4, verse 11. The author says, let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest, so that no one may fall through a disobedience such as theirs. What is this disobedience that's spoken of? What was the disobedience that caused the Israelites to miss out on the promised land rest? Is it sin? Is it an action that once done, it removes us from heaven? No way. It's the disobedience of unbelief. And you see that clearly in this text. I want to turn us back to chapter 3, verses 18 and 19. Let's look there together. Speaking again of the Israelites, and to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest? The Israelites who didn't make it to the promised land. Is it not those who were disobedient? Then the author tells us what this disobedience looks like in verse 19. So we see that they were unable to enter because of unbelief. It was the disobedience of unbelief that caused the Israelites to fail to enter the rest of the promised land. Just simply refusing to cling to God as being able to save when it looked like no one can save. When there were giants in the land and it looked impossible, it was the refusal to trust God to deliver that caused the Israelites to fail to enter the rest. And the message is clear. In like manner, hang on to Jesus now. No matter what, no matter how dark it looks, no matter how impossible your circumstances and future become, cling to Jesus. And you'll enter that rest. Good beyond measure. You can trust him with your future. Lastly, one of the ways that we're going to do that, the author of Hebrews says, in a way that's a bit tricky to understand and perhaps easy to miss. One of the ways we're going to continue to trust Jesus on this side of the rest of heaven is to take a weekly day off. There's a third rest mentioned in Hebrews chapter 4. And it's the rest of the Sabbath, a weekly day off. The idea of a weekly Sabbath is mentioned several times in chapter 4, verse 4, and chapter 4, verse 9. And if you read those two verses, this idea of a Sabbath is connected to the ultimate rest of heaven. And I think the author's point is a weekly day off is an opportunity to tangibly trust God with your future. It's a way to say in your heart, God, I'm giving my concerns to you. I give my schedule to you. I give my day planner to you. I give everything that's undone to you. I give everything that I haven't accomplished yet to you. And I'm going to relax into your presence. I'm just going to rest in your finished work for me and in your ability to deliver. And that is sometimes the best way to bring a deposit of heaven into our daily lives now. It's a real deposit of the rest of heaven weekly into our life now. I hope you'll take God up on that incredible offer. All right. If you're engaging with this in a small group, there's a lot to talk about. May the Lord bless you in your discussion of his holy word.